All right, I thought I would discuss my concept of Total War or Warhammer Total War's battle design philosophy. First, I'll start with the units themselves. Basically, regular infantry is the pawns from chess that move 2 squares up, and archers are the ones that move 1 square up in between the pawns that move 2 squares up to support the most advanced pawns, the two square advanced ones. Um, Bishops are the monstrous infantry, like chaos spawns or um, uh, um, rat ogres or something like that, or um, something like that. Um, Cavalry are obviously knights, of course. And the single big units, like giants or the I can't remember what the Skaven monstrosity is called, but it's like a writhing mutant is one of them, or the big tree ants, the big tree men of the wood elves, or the steam tank for Empire, or maybe the Green Knight or something. Those are rooks. Obviously, the leader is the king. The general commander is the king, and the for Empire, for instance, the witch hunters and sorcerers and the paladins for Bretonia and so on are the queens, because losing them doesn't affect the morale of the army and make it much more likely to lose. Um, Now, there's obviously variations. One of the things about Total Warhammer is that there's a lot of racial variations on emphasis. However, Bretonia and Wood Elves are very different because Wood Elves actually follow more of the traditional Total War style from previous titles of combined arms and focus fire and uh, hard counters and so on in a more clearly delineated way than most armies. They're very pure in their counter capabilities and so on. Um, However, what this means is Bretonia is more a focus on some combination of bishop and knight heavy kind of approach. Like Pegasus Knights are basically the bishop monstrous infantry, and shock cavalry and Grail Knights and stuff are basically the regular cavalry, and they're slightly better than everyone else's. So it's almost like if it's a specialist, not a specialist in the sense of like it only does one thing, but like if it's like the special unique strength unit of the race, then basically the equivalent version on a chessboard in a regular chess matchup would get like 2 HP on it or something. So it can take an extra hit or something to mark the equivalent, the um, uh, relevant regular chess matchup uh, way to approach those roles of units in that type of army. So Chaos is very elite oriented, but very expensive. Well, having the numbers, but it's extra expensive, and it starts very weak, and it's vulnerable to attrition. You can definitely give a Chaos chaos player attritional problems better than other players. But they're designed to be more effective per battle, as far as I can tell. So you can recover your lost troops with other armies a little better, but chaos is more power focused in the moment. It's almost like the USA, whereas you're like the Taliban or Vietnam, basically relative to them. So you have to keep that in mind and so on. But remember that they have expensive units, despite having the numbers and power to each unit. At least that's my interpretation. And it is fairly infantry focused, so it's like powerful pawns, basically. You know. And vampire counts are obviously queen and king focused with extra summons and heavy damage abilities and so on, focused on their main heroes. They're you can almost say that there's a range limit for the special units to and so on, like the bishops and the knights and the rooks. I can't remember if there's a Draco Lich for the vampire counts. But basically, I think their specialists are weaker. So in a chess matchup, you might put a range limitation on them so that they're not as strong in sniping across the board to limit their power in a regular chess matchup to mimic the effect, roughly. Because you can't reduce lower than 1 HP to start with on a unit in chess. So that's that. Now, someone said Total Warhammer isn't chess if you can nuke the board. But hear me out. The Empire all artillery, like total usage of artillery, like all 24 units or all 20 units are artillery, only works against non-cavalry that's not spaced out. If you space out your if you have cavalry and you space them out, then they'll close the gap faster, and also you won't like be able to target multiple units with volleys, and so on. And artillery is not necessarily that accurate, so you really are focusing on things that are clumped up. So there's like a whole meta strategy of rock paper scissors involved with the chess matchup on top of it. And there's sort of like a 1 or 2 time 3x3 square nuke that each player can use, or some players can use, depending on their faction, for clumped up units after a set of turns and the battle's kind of met, and so on, to avoid nuking the entire army to begin with. Because there is a range gap between them, so you can space out your units if the enemy is artillery heavy. So to mimic that, you would put like a 5-turn halt to begin with on all of those nukes in a chess matchup or something. So this is simultaneously a way to design a chess game revolving around Warhammer Total War, and also like an explanation of the Total Warhammer balancing philosophy and so on, from what I get. Now, I haven't played it for like 5 years at least, and I wasn't very good at it, except for Wood Elves and Skaven. But the meta is basically... I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it just dawned on me that, oh, it's like chess. And then, like, suddenly, like, all the purposes of the units started to make more sense in some way or something. You know, um, like it's like it makes more clear sense because I'm used to very um, strict, uh, um, strict, um, tactical maneuvering and positioning and direct counters that Total War traditionally has, which is why I'm good with Wood Elves. But Skaven are good because my alter ego strategy is to just swarm and let the numbers do their thing in a 1-to-1 fight, basically consistently, and so on. And also a certain like multiple fights trajectory of grinding down elite units with swarms of less good units, but the balance between the cost of their army and mine is in my favor. And like in terms of gold for recruitment or something. So be aware of this matchup, but remember that armies can differ, and what someone is technically best at might be needing to be offset by a specialization in the things that directly counter the enemy. And all of them are built very different, and so on. So a balanced army might actually be the best thing in the end, but you might want to play around based on what you think they might do with a slightly different unit composition to counter their unique strengths as a faction, or you might want to play a general layout, which is your best strength in most situations, or you might want to lean heavily on your own unit specializations and overwhelm them that way. And the strategy you pick will differ based on what of those variations you do and what they do. So it's not cut in the wool. It's not cut. It's not dyed in the wool. Cut the cloth. Cut in the cloth. Um, Rock solid. What your best strategy is. It's not a meta strategy that you just use to win all games necessarily. Because even the all artillery thing, Bretonnia could actually outmaneuver and spread out, and the artillery would be much less useful, and the cavalry would close in real hard. And Bretonnia is naturally cavalry oriented, and they are right beside the Empire more or less. So, which is the best artillery faction, and if they fought, then Bretonnia would naturally be in the right position to dominate the all artillery strategy with a little bit of spacing out of their cavalry. And that doesn't require Bretonnia to play to its weaknesses. And also, it directly counters the meta strategy for the Empire. I think maybe when you're fighting the vampire counts of the Bretonnian factions area, the best strategy is to take out the kings and queens of the vampire counts right away with your heaviest cavalry or your Pegasus Knights or something like that. Because basically the monstrous units are good against singular elite monster units. And the special infantry that is anti-heavy, anti-large at the same time, and tough morale and discipline is going to be good against the rooks, basically, as well, and the kings and queens. And they've got the numbers of raw attrition on their side if you keep them fresh for the fight for that one particular type of unit. Now, the heavy infantry can partially take a hit, so they're 2 HP most often, and I guess the chosen for chaos might be 3 HP, or something like that, but like, you know what I mean, as pawns, who can turn into bishops with like the same HP that they had when they turned into bishops, because at the last half of the game, the point is the meta strategy is to keep the rooks, the giant monsters, and the king and queen alive after using up the cavalry, the pawns, and the bishops, the monstrous infantry. And the pawns are the infantry, melee, and infantry when they're advanced 2 squares on the chessboard, and archers when they're advanced 1 square, backing up the front pawns. And, that's the best way to look at it. And, of course, horse archers are, they're kind of like, I guess the best metaphor is to give everyone 2 HP so that they can like technically take a hit. And then there's room for downgrading to 1 HP if they're particularly weak. But basically, horse archers are kind of like the thing that's like, if everyone's 2 HP to begin with on average, or as like the middle ground, and every variation is some addition or subtraction from that, then horse archers are kind of like a bishop and a rook at the same time, but 1 HP. I guess the Chaos Chosen are basically pawns, the front line pawns of infantry that are like 3 HP. And this game design philosophy will affect all of the balance and stuff like that, and there'll be meta strategies and stuff like that, but there's a lot of rock, paper, scissors too, and this is my best guess on how to play the game with the different races in mind, and understand how to play them in a sense, and roughly what they counter on average, but to keep in mind who you're playing against and their race, and the makeup of your own army as well. And like, maybe artillery is the bishop or the rook as well, or like a bishop and rook combined in a sense, because they can reach out and touch someone early on, but you notice how they're really good in the middle of the battle, and like they can kind of mop up the enemy, but if everything's spread out, then the artillery's not that great. And it's like, okay, but they're powerful hitters when everyone's like doing the height, or what's it called, the peak of battle, or the full force of battle, or whatever. When everyone's bunching up and stuff, the artillery's really good. So it's like, okay. And you technically want the artillery to last, if anything lives at all, other than the leader and your agent. So it's like, okay, that's how it's a bishop and a rook at the same time. But they're 1 HP basically. And the nukes from your mages or heroes, the special like literally the Skaven literally have a nuke, and like the spells that hit wide areas of enemies or single targets and so on, of the very destructive spells, are very much the 3x3 square nuke on the chessboard. So, like, you could have it so that some races have their king or agent drop a nuke anywhere on the board, let's say, or like they have it so that your king or queen agent, or leader or agent, can drop a 2x2 nuke or a 3x3 nuke, so you can have a variation there. Um, Within the 5 squares of them or something, or 4 squares of them or something. Anywhere on the board within that range. Or there could be like a 3x1 nuke. So you choose the direction the nuke travels and so on. Like the little, I can't remember what it's called, but it's called something pendulum or something, or shadow pendulum or something. And it's shadow wizard behavior. There's a line, firestorm goes in a line kind of nuke as well. You know, so you could probably actually make a chess game out of Total War Warhammer with these things in mind, basically. And if you approach Total Warhammer with these concepts in mind, it might really up your game and understanding of how to play the game. I don't speak for Beastmen, I don't speak for Chaos Dwarves, I don't speak for Orcs necessarily. But I'm sure you could come up with some rules for them as well, I don't speak for Goblins. Goblins are a weird one. It's like they have like they would have special rules where like their pawns can go like diagonal or straight, and like be 1 HP, because they're weak but they're tricky, that kind of thing. So that's like a way to approach that kind of thing. That's how I'm imagining Total War Warhammer. I haven't played it for a long time, but when I wrap my head around it, I'm like, oh, this is actually a good way to look at it, because that's something that I can actually test and so on, and it feels inspired to come up with it like this. And if this helps other people stupendously, then maybe it'll make the games more enjoyable for more people, from a genuinely strategic way, because they actually understand the philosophy of the game, which was one of the peak barriers for me personally of enjoying the game. I could enjoy Wood Elves, I could enjoy Skaven because I'm naturally good with those strategy types, but but the other races, except Chaos, because I also understand elite infantry go stomp, it didn't make any sense to me. So it was like, okay. And the Empire is basically the very generalist race. And when I didn't understand the design philosophy, I couldn't leverage my strengths very well. And you can get into sword versus spear infantry too, and shield, like sword and spear infantry and what they're good against and so on. So you could have like a rule where cavalry does half damage to the spears, and other pawns do half damage to your pawns or something when they have like 1 HP or 2 HP or something. You can have like a special rule there basically to represent being specialized slightly in dealing with those particular things or something. That's how I'd approach it. And I know technically being specialized means you're good against them for damage, not like taking reduced damage. But this is the overall matchup style that I'm approaching it as, and so on. So yeah, I hope this helps. I'm inspired to come up with this concept. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but it kind of rings based on my experience playing. This might actually be a very good helper for someone that doesn't understand the balance of Total Warhammer at all and keeps losing and got sick and tired of the game because they couldn't play well.